Here's a BMW X5m wastegate repair kit and the turbo repair kit. I'm going to go over both of these items, so if you need those, you can buy those in the links in the description box below. These are the exact parts that I use to do my repairs and my upgrades on the BMW X5m, and I think it also works for the M5 and the M6. I know the rebuild kits do. The only concerns I have is the wastegate repair kit might have some variations, but I'm not 100% sure. Now, don't get this kit confused with the 550i series car that had the different motor, because these kits are similar, but they're not the same. This is the rebuild kit I originally had made for the X5m. This one on the left is found on your S63 engine. This one on the right is found on the S63 engine. There's also an S63tu. This one I had made for the X5m, but it may also fit the x6m. Well, most likely it fits the x6m, but it may also fit the M5 and the M6. There is a version of the M5 and M6 that had a solid flat valve, which would be impossible for it to seal. So this would be a great opportunity to change it over to this version, which it really should have had, to make sure that it seals properly. The tabs are different than the N63 version, and the wastegate valve is bigger than the N63 version. The reason the valve is bigger is because the S63 had a twin scroll, which has a little bit bigger of an area where the wastegate passage is, so it needs a bigger valve to seal. The bushings are the same as the N63. Actually, this whole piece right here is basically it's almost the same as this one. It's like 99% the same besides this right here. So this valve can actually be removed here and swapped over. I go through and TIG weld every one of these down. So this actually looks the same as this before I weld it. The reason I do that is because I've had a couple cases on the N54 where this has come off and the valve separate. I don't want that to ever happen again, so I went and spent about $3,500 on a TIG welder, and I now weld all these up so you don't have to worry about that. And I also weld all of these up too, just in case those were to ever have a problem. Now, I do have a set with this style on my BMW with the N54. I've never had any problems with them coming off. I think it was just maybe a rare occurrence, but I have seen it probably about 5 or 6 times. I've also heard of it happening with the Hexon turbos. So be very cautious when you buy wastegate repair kits. If you get like a cheaper brand that in some cases they have, like this piece being smaller diameter, just make sure that you go back and TIG weld this up at least. That way, if this fails, well, the heck with it, but at least you won't have to worry about that failing. The N63 motor had a turbo that had the part number MGT2256. Now here's the rebuild kit. I'm going to take the GT15 rebuild kit and take the majority of all the variations out of it. This is the whole GT15 kit with all the variations. So to simplify it, I'm just going to make a rebuild kit that's specifically for the N63 and S63 engines. That way there's no confusion and there's no excess parts that you don't need to pay for. So in this kit you'll have one compressor housing O-ring and one bearing housing O-ring, and you'll have the collar and spacer you need. Now on the ones that come out of that turbo, it's actually a 3-piece system, but it works as the same purpose. They just have the differences. This bottom collar here is divided into 2 pieces on the original turbo. This piece is a single oil port 360-degree bearing. This is just a stationary bearing, so it sits in its place. It's locked in place with this piece right here. I also started making a video to show you on how to rebuild these to make it simplified for you, but I have not finished that as of today. real quick, I'm going to go over the process on changing the valve out. This has to be grounded off, and then the valve can be punched through the other side. Then this has to be drilled through this weld and pin. Once this assembly's out, you can remove the bushing. The way that works is you're going to put a bolt through here that connects to your slide hammer, and then you want to heat this area up really good and hot, and then start pulling on it with the slide hammer. That's the way that we've been able to get them. Usually it still takes 30 to 45 minutes. One time it took about an hour just to get that bushing out of there. One time it was taking so long that Ian just cut it out with a die grinder because it was that hard to get out of there. Now, I think the problem that people run into, or that maybe we had run into, is when we start pulling on that, it might start mushrooming that bushing. So that will make it difficult to pull it out. Now you can try and push it through, but we've always just pulled it out. I've tried to push it through and then it wouldn't go any farther. Another tip that you're going to need to know is that when you're pushing that bushing in the S63 housing, that you have to push it in about halfway, and then you're going to put the wastegate assembly in there with the valve inside the bushing, and then press this in the rest of the way where it needs to be. The reason is because if you don't do that and you push the bushing all the way in there, you're not going to be able to put this valve in there because the tolerances are too tight. Now on the X5m and M5, it's completely different. You can push that bushing in first and then bring that valve in and put it in. But it's just different for the S63 turbine housing for some reason. When you go to weld these arms, this one is positioned just like that with it closed. But you really should mark that before you remove this piece. So make sure you hold it over and hold it with the valve so you're not over adjusting for the wear that's in the bushing. And then you can draw a line with your Dremel here, or just make a mark up here to where you know where that piece needs to be welded in the closed position. Then you make your additional adjustments with the wastegate actuator adjustment rod. If this job seems a little bit too difficult for you, then we do offer the service, so you can always contact us at turbolabamerica@gmail.com. If you want us to provide the parts, I will just link to those in the description box where you can purchase those.